At this hour, Kenyan security forces claim to be in control of the Westgate Premier Shopping Mall in Nairobi, Kenya, a site of one of the most horrifying terror attacks in recent memory. The Kenyan Interior Ministry saying our forces are combing the mall floor by floor, looking for anyone left behind. We believe all hostages have been released. This hour, the Kenyan government hasn't yet made a full accounting. Midday Saturday, Nairobi, Kenya, a mall that could easily be mistaken for any major mall in the U.S. or anywhere in the world, fell under attack by 10 to 15 gunmen, reportedly from the Islamist Al-Shabaab militia. One eyewitness was an American who had recently moved to Nairobi from North Carolina.
You could hear, while we were back there, them methodically kind of going from store to store, talking to people, asking questions, shooting, screams, and then it would stop for a while, and then they would go to another store.
Another eyewitness, a software engineer who was in the parking lot with his two daughters, said they were throwing grenades like maize to chickens. He and his daughter survived. But at last count, at least 62 people have died in the attack. Most of the dead were Kenyans, along with foreigners from Britain, France, Australia, Canada, and India. At one point, terrorists started a fire in the mall, which, according to security forces, was meant as a diversion. A reported 175 people were wounded in a siege that entered its third day today. At least 3 assailants have been killed by security forces, with at least 10 suspects arrested. The attackers also took hostages as the standoff proceeded.
We have done search of the building, and we can confirm that the hostages, almost all of them have been evacuated.
The Kenyan Foreign Minister Amina Mohammed has since told Al Jazeera the mall attack was the work of Al-Qaeda, not Al-Shabaab. More on that in just a second. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta said that one of his nephews was in the mall and killed in the attack. General Julius Karangi, the chief of the Kenyan Defense Forces, said the terrorists are clearly a multinational collection from all over the world. The FBI is looking into reports that Americans were among the attackers. New York Times photographer Tyler Hicks happened to be nearby the mall when the siege began. He entered the mall along with police officers and captured these stunning images.
Once I got inside the mall, I could see how tense everyone was, the army and police, how carefully they were moving. They were dashing across open areas, taking extreme care with their cover. It seemed kind of like anywhere you looked, there would be another body. People were still hiding in shops, and as the police and the army were moving through, they would either discover people or they would sense that help had arrived, and then they would flood out. So you get kind of moments of silence and then other moments of big streams of people who they were trying to get out as quickly as possible. It really seemed like everywhere we went, more people came out of the woodwork, and in one sense it seemed very abandoned. And for example, the music that plays in the shopping mall, the typical kind of music, was still playing on the intercom, and so it was kind of this eerie silence with this music, interrupted occasionally by gunfire. Terrified people were crying, screaming, just running for their lives, really. I never thought that I would encounter this kind of tragedy in a public place like this, where completely innocent civilians were just gunned down and murdered. It's not like a conventional war where you expect combatants to get hurt or expect there to be collateral damage in those kind of situations. This was just a suicide mission and murder.
Joining me now is Jeremy Scahill, my colleague at The Nation magazine, where he's national security correspondent. He's also author of the book Dirty Wars, The World's a Battlefield, producer and writer of the film by the same name. And Jeremy, you were in Somalia. There's footage in that film of being on a rooftop with incoming fire from Al-Shabaab fighters, basically. What do you make of the conflicting reports about whether Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda did it, and who is Al-Shabaab and how are they different from Al-Qaeda?
Right. Well, first of all, Al-Shabaab they were a group of relative nobodies in 2006 during the Bush administration. They were a sort of outlier in a group called the Islamic Courts Union, which was largely made up of, almost exclusively made up of Somali actors, and these actors meaning players on the scene in Somalia. And Al-Shabaab was the sort of group among those that sort of had the most allegiance to Al-Qaeda or affinity for Osama bin Laden's message, but they had no political sway whatsoever domestically within Somalia. The U.S. partnered with the Ethiopian military in 2006, 2007, and staged an invasion of Somalia. And they dismantled this government of the Islamic Courts Union, which was the only government that brought stability in Somalia since the Black Hawk Down episode and the fall of Siad Barre's regime. So what ended up happening as a result of that is that the Shabaab became the vanguard of what was viewed as a movement to fight off a crusading force backed by the United States. And so Shabaab started to get street credibility within Somalia because they were the only ones fighting.